Server. Oh my goodness, we're being recorded. All right, we're going to talk value prop. My guest here today is Jake Jorgovan, aka the Lead Farmer, aka I don't know. Do you have another nickname?
They called me Jorgovich in my high school, my college fraternity. So,
All right, so let's dig in. We're going to talk about value prop. Jake, what is a value prop?
yeah, so I look at it as it's like a combination of like your niche, your offer, and like really how you like package and present what it is you do. But it's like this really like the most important thing of all, pretty much in terms of business and marketing and everything. So.
So what is the value prop for Content Allies, the company that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so the one we came up with now is basically nurture your prospects. Crap, I don't know. Let me get my workbook pulled up. I don't have it right in front of me, and it's fresh, so I don't have it memorized.
I've put
Oh
you
my
on the spot. I
gosh,
love
you
it.
did put me. I did not see that question coming.
I'm a
Where
good
is it at?
interviewer, man. This is what I do.
We help B2B companies nurture their pipeline with curated email newsletters and LinkedIn content.
Ooh, that's
So,
clear. That's
yeah.
something. That's something that you can hold on to. So what's the formula that you use to get to a value prop? Like, how do you think about compiling one?
Yeah, so the way that I look at it, really quick, like I'll dive into the formula to create one. But the thing I know, yeah, I'll just dive into the formula to create one for now, and I'll get to another formula later. But the way I look at it is I like the framework I just laid out is I help X do or accomplish Y through Z. And like your marketing copy doesn't have to actually end up like this. Like you can change and put whatever other copy on your website or anything that you want to, but this framework's really helpful to get clear on what it is you offer. So I help X equals your target market. So you're saying, I help, B2B companies, or I help B2B entrepreneurs, or I help, storage companies, or whatever that is, or corporate executives. And so you're like choosing X as like the target market or that niche you're focusing on. Do or accomplish Y would be like the benefit, like what is the actual pain that you're solving, the problem that you're solving for them. And then through Z is like how you actually do it, which is like what your service actually does. And so that like getting that into a single sentence is very helpful to work through and try to figure out what it is and like articulate in that one sentence what you offer. So that's kind of where I typically go to for that, like to get things clear at the start.
Hmm. Okay. And you've seen how many value props do you think in your lifetime?
Yeah, so it's just okay. So this is the other formula that's interesting is because at Lead Cookie we've done over 200 clients that we've done outreach campaigns for,
Mhm.
and we have the exact same process for all of them. They do the exact same thing, and the only thing that changes is basically their target market and their message.
Mhm.
And so basically, like what's changing is their value proposition. And so 200 people go through that, and you have some people that get like literally they can't keep up. Like the results are just so high. And then you've got other people where it's like, hey, you got like 3 leads in a quarter with us. Like that has happened. And like that's like the difference. And so the way I look at it is like you've got your value proposition multiplied by any marketing channel is going to produce your results. And so if your value proposition sucks, then like it doesn't matter what marketing you do. It's like just gonna like kill it. It's like putting a zero next to like your marketing. And so it's like it's just gonna kill off your results. Versus if you get some like really unique, strong value proposition, it fixes the pain, it's like on a surging trend in the industry, then like you've nailed it, and like that's just becomes a multiplier and everything else spreads easily. Like Lead Cookie has gotten so much traction because of like the surge of the market, like of just the growth of LinkedIn, like the compound annual growth rate. It's hitting a pain point for people. It's things that they don't want to do. So there's like all these things in that value proposition that just multiply any marketing. And I've kind of honestly been like haphazard in my marketing, but it still works because like the value prop's been strong from the start.
Mm. So what's an example of like a really clear value prop that you've had from a client?
Yeah. So one example I always look back is like we've had a lot of like vertically niched marketing agencies. that have worked really well with our service. And I think this is like relevant to some of the people in the group as well. But like we had one guy where they was saying like, I help, B2B companies automate manual processes through custom software. And so like really niche, really focused. And that was like just really crushed it because he was like, I help blue collar companies automate manual processes through custom software. So he was going after like, manufacturing, like trucking companies, like stuff like that. That's like not sexy and exciting. But like resonated with them. We had another woman specializing in like franchise recruitment. And so she was like targeting specifically franchise owners who were trying to recruit more people for their franchises to become franchisees. Super niche, super targeted, worked really well there. Like even on the product side, we had another guy who was doing basically like AWS guardrails. It was like this service to basically kind of help people with like security and getting all of like their various AWS instances at a corporate company all aligned and like secure and on the same processes. And so just like the nicheness of that and just being like, hey, we help keep your AWS services compliant and like we get you into a single service login and stuff, like getting just like really niche and really focused and fixing a clear problem. Like those are some of the ones that come to mind that have worked really well.
And how about the ones that suck?
Ones that suck tend to be like people that go like general. They try to solve like a very commoditized problem. So like, I don't know how many people like have reached out to us and it's just like, it's not specific. So like, they're just trying to say like, hey, we help you grow your business or something like that. Or like, we're like, we do leadership development and, it's the people that don't take a stance and say like, this is the specific problem that I'm solving. And they just try to go general, or they just try to use like growth, or we're going to save you time and stuff like that. Like the article from this week, like saving time and things like that just isn't a value prop that most people are interested in. And so we've even seen like operations people like fail at that kind of value proposition as well. It's got to be like something to help them kind of grow and achieve more. So
yeah, even on the saving time thing. So the example that we have in the module this week is Podcast Royale. And one of the reasons, so there's like a couple levels of this, which is for me to use a service like Podcast Royale or Podcast Mode or another podcast editing service would be personally to save time. But that's like the top level. The actual like more specific, I would say, gap that is like being closed is the amount of pain and the amount of manual bullshit that I just won't do because I just don't have the like the headspace to do it. So like, I think the further you can drill in, like maybe saving time is like a really top level thing. But if there's like a level of pain that you can like stick the knife into and twist on, that might be a better way to think about it. And yeah, the other ones that I see that are kind of fuzzy are like when it's like amorphous language. So it's like, we help you do this better, or it's like there's no real clear or specific outcome that you're pushing people towards. It's just like fuzzy language. And when it's fuzzy language, people can't fully understand like where you're taking them.
Yeah. And like, that's exactly kind of one we dialed on with like the lead cookie copy. And so like, we hit on like this idea that like, your business needs leads to grow and like, you can't rely on referrals, word of mouth. And then, but like, you hate prospecting and you don't have the time, or you struggle to stay consistent with it because like most of our customers that come to us would like try to do prospecting on their own. And then they were like, I just feel sleazy, or I can't do it, or I hate doing it, or it's like the worst thing in the world. And so just like imagine you have a team that's prospecting for you and you just like alleviate that pain, that thing that they know they need to do, that they get results when they do, but they just don't want to do it. And so like those kind of, that was like a big thing that we hit on with that value proposition, was just taking that off their plate and like supplying those consistent leads and everything.
Mm-hmm. And I think the same principle applies for the content allies, which is like people want to be a thought leader in their space or in their market or whatever else. But a lot of people like me don't like to get on their soapbox and grandstand or do their thing and proclaim to have all of the answers or all of the knowledge. So instead of doing something at all, they'll just like, what I did was just kind of, sit back and not do it. But I knew that it was something that needed to happen. So I think like the way that you explain that is like that before and after. Like you've tried this or you've had this pain before, or you should do it. It's kind of like you need to do it, but you're not doing it. And, your business is suffering because of that. And we can be we can bridge that gap between where you are before and where you want to go. So I think that's super clear. What else have we got here? So the hallmarks of a clear and specific value prop. What constitutes a clear and specific value prop?
Yeah. So one of the things, like that formula is really useful. The piece that is clear who it's for, the benefit it brings, and like what it is you're doing. I guess that's another thing. When some people, when they take the copywriting too far, and then you get this like giant benefit oriented tagline, and it's like, oh, that's all great, but like, what do you actually do? And so like, if you get too far into like marketing copy, and it's not like, sometimes I just have to tell people like, well, you build software. Like, what is it? Like, just tell me what it is you do. And so like, that's just really clear to it. And like another thing that I think is really like a good benchmark. I've written blogs on this, but just partially because I've been in like outreach for a long time. Like I use outreach to test value props. Because it's one thing to like put together a value prop and have all the like wonderful people in this group like pat you on the shoulder and tell you it's nice, and then maybe get some of your existing customers or people to buy, but that still doesn't validate that it's a strong value prop, because like you've already got this trust. But if you can get someone who's completely cold to say like, hey, that sounds awesome, or that's interesting, can we talk more? That's when like, holy crap, this is fire. Like this is something that is interesting. Because like you've just hooked into a pain of a complete person you have zero trust with, and the value proposition has resonated with them that much that they're like, this is what I'm looking for. So that's another kind of bar that I look toward, if you can, to do like some sort of cold outreach and see what kind of response you get for it.
Yeah, so it's a nice test, which is if you can get someone cold to click with it, then you're onto something basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Common mistakes. What are the common mistakes people make when they create their value prop?
Yeah. So the too broad, too benefit oriented is a big one. Niching on something the clients don't actually care about. So tying to a value proposition that the clients don't care, or trying to, that's one. And I'll give like the example on this one is that like my version 1 of Content Allies, that was like the mistake I made. So version 1 Content Allies back in like December when I tried to launch it was like virtual assistants for content marketers to help with all the support and like admin tasks and just all the things you have to do in content marketing, which just adds up and takes a ton of time. Like anyone who sent an email newsletter knows you spend a little bit of time writing and then you spend another hour just like getting all the buttons and things checked off and then actually sending it out to your list. So that was like the vision, but like most people didn't care enough, or it wasn't that big of a pain. They weren't thinking about it. So it was like really nice to have. And so that was one of just like focusing on a problem. Yeah. Like it's kind of almost like the rescue framework from this week. It just wasn't a big enough pain or urgent enough pain for them that it was valuable. So that was where I failed there. And I had another one. This was, I think, before event. We worked together, Alex, called Prospect Scout, where we were trying to do these like in-depth sales research, like reports that kind of came out of some of the Dream Client campaigns. So it was this like 10-page Google Doc of like super detailed like research on a company, like who the decision makers were, all the information about them. But ultimately, like everyone was like, this is way overkill, and like they didn't think it was like worth actually paying for. So again, just like niching on stuff that clients don't actually care about solving is another big one that can definitely kill something. That one tends to be a little harder to figure out. You only learn that when people don't buy. So
this is why when I look into markets, I look for existing providers that have some level of traction. Like that's to me is a signal of like people get carried away with it. Like if I'm going to do something new, then it has to be a completely new category, or I have to create something from scratch. But when you do that, you bear the risk of like having an unknown market, and then you've got to like figure out as you go along, okay, do people actually even give a shit about this? Like, is this something that they're going to pay for, versus having something that's kind of similar? So like with WP Curve, we knew that WordPress support was a thing. We knew people were like already paying for it, but we wanted to be just like really, really good at it. right? Like we had to just be the best at what we did. So when we were able to like get narrow and focus in on that, it was very clear what we were, which was WordPress support, and what we weren't, which was everything else, marketing, website design, all that other sort of stuff. But we made the same mistakes, right? We were like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and we'll go and start this plugin over here and this thing over there. Like everybody does it. But I think the point is like getting specific and clear on solving a problem that people actually already pay for or care about. Save yourself a lot of time and headaches.
Yeah, that is basically the failure on both of those attempts. Was that it was just out of my head and not really validated in like the real world of what other people were doing. And so that was like, I think the failure there versus if you look at like Lead Cookie, I did the research and found some companies that were crushing it already in this space. Literally bottled after them. And then even on the like content allies of like the LinkedIn content and the email newsletters, it's like there's others in the space. You know, sometimes it's like agencies that are just offering this service line. Mm-hmm. And so like you said, like other people are paying for it. It might be paying to like a bigger company that includes it as one thing of like a whole wider thing. But it's like, yeah, people are already paying for this in some capacity.
And you can get narrow and just be really, really good at it, like do an excellent job. And then that's a standalone service. So that is I think that's a useful way to even explore, like figuring out good product ideas, which is looking at all of the different offerings that like say a big company has, or that someone's got wrapped up in a package and go, okay, what could I peel out of that would be scalable that I could wrap a team around? Then you'd have to back it into what the market size is and back it into what the opportunity is. But that's like a lazy man's way of figuring out a productized service angle. Maybe a smart man, smart, lazy, I don't know. Smart person rather than smart man too. All right. So what else have we got here? What are some of the things you've learned about your products?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I guess like some of the other things I've learned or just seen people do is just trying to be, and you kind of, again, you hit on like the rescue framework's good because like that is, you hit on a lot of these, and like I see a lot of people try to force a niche they don't actually care about. And like just trying to be like, or just like trying to be opportunistic and like chasing the money. And so like I had this guy that booked literally a pick my brain session with me the other day, and he's like a 1/3 owner in a bakery that's like doing $300K a year, and he's like the marketing guy at this bakery that he's like owns a business with, and he like is doing really well at building this up and like building this profitable business, and he does marketing on the side. And he's like, well, I had these tech clients that paid really well, so now I want to like go into like writing for tech companies. And it's like but you're like writing for like water treatment companies and stuff. And it's like, that's not like, you're chasing like money as opposed to like going after like what you're like the world you're in and what you're experienced in and what you're knowledgeable about and stuff. And like, it's just like that when I see people going down that route where they're just choosing things because someone paid them more, or like they had a client in that space, like that's just is like another avenue that I just see not be ideal. Like the whole idea of like the stage test, like would you feel comfortable like going to like a conference of these people and like be happy hanging out? Like if the answer to that is no, then like that's probably like just not a good thing. So that's I think another one that I see people just try to get like really opportunistic or say like, I'm not going to go after this market because they don't have enough money and stuff like that, but that's like the world that they live in for their like entire time. I think that
that's a good one. That's that brings me back to the early days of Lead Cookie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what happened with that.
Yeah, so I think like that's so there's like interesting points because like I think you're pulling like a counter to what I'm saying here too. I guess that like sometimes the people right in front of you are not the best customers. And so like early on, like I had a bunch of like freelancers and consultants sign up for Lead Cookie, and it was like really frustrating and not ideal, and they were not great customers. But like I eventually trying to go toward enterprise for us also was actually like very not right for us, and terrible to work with, and it was too much work for the same amount. Mm-hmm. And so for us, like we eventually raised our price point to a threshold where we kind of like leveled up one tier to where we're not like the freelancers and consultants that were my audience at the start. And it got more to, I guess, like consulting firms and like businesses that had a few people on teams, like small businesses of like 2 to 20 people is where most of our customers sit at now.
Hmm.
But the first round of it was like tons of freelancers and coaches and stuff, and those are the people right in front of me.
Mm.
But I had to like go up just like a level from that. So
Mm.
yeah, I guess there's a flip side to that as well.
Yeah, and this, I guess, the point of all of this is that, like, you don't know until you do it, right? So you don't know until you have a point of view and you go and try and like execute against that point of view, and then you get feedback from the market. The challenge that I see a lot of people run into is when they decide to have a point of view and then they commit to it, and then it works against them, that they don't change direction, they don't change course. So you just keep banging your head trying to force something that's not there, and this is where the entrepreneurial kind of drive can work against you, which is you, you kind of like banging your head against a wall, and it's tiring. Like you get tired from doing that. It can be exhausting.
Yeah, and that's where again like we had to do like whenever I had to shut down that like first iteration of Content Allies, it was like just painstaking going against the wall. It's not like there's a clear sign of like, hey, this isn't working, or like a cutoff point. Like we actually had some traction in paying customers, but it was just like, this is hell, and this is going to be a hellish business if I continue it. And so that's like the other thing is like you can get some traction, and still have a bad value proposition, like or not have the best value. Like I could have kept going with Content Allies, but it would have been painstaking, or that first iteration of it, but it would have been just like painstaking and hard. And then I just like switched the model, try something different, and it immediately just was like way better. So I think that just not getting too attached to anything early and just being willing to realize like, hey, I might totally screw this up, and that's okay. And like, I'm going to come back and try again. Like that's, I don't know, just getting into that mindset, I think is helpful, because that was a brutal experience. So
it's hard though, right? Because you do get attached to the idea, and especially for you, because I think you get a bunch of external commitments about like you wanted the business, and so there's something to that where you plant the flag, and then you're like, oh man, I got to like backpedal against what I committed to, but the market's not there, and so that's not to say that you shouldn't do that or have that level of commitment, but I guess the point is like actually listening to the market. Keep it, because we can riff, we can go off the script here, but let's stick with the value prop stuff. What else? What are some of the other lessons learned about value prop? What else have you seen?
Yeah, I think just like that hits on like a lot of it. It's just like having a clear, like if you're like marketing isn't working, like the way you can look at it is like it's either the market you're going after is wrong, the message of what you're saying to them is wrong, or like the medium is wrong. And so like, maybe you're just trying to access them through the wrong channel. So it's like another framework to look at it through. Like if something's not working in your marketing. So that's another avenue of just like, maybe what you have is actually good, but it's just like you're talking to the wrong people. Or maybe like you're just trying to hit them through wrong channel. And if like you're trying to do like outreach on LinkedIn and it's to like education, institutions, like we just know that that's like a bad channel. So you could just have the wrong medium. So I think like those are just kind of some frameworks of like, if what you're doing is not working, is like, is it just the wrong person or the wrong like value prop as a core? Because like that is all tied together in a sense.
Yeah, and this is interesting because one thing that I've realized with the coaching work is that like it's very much a relationship business, right? So reaching out cold to people and like making connections there, like that kickstarts a conversation. But what I've found is that a lot of the people that are coming to me now are folks that are either in your network or in a joint network, or they've seen something on actually like social media. So I had a guy that reached out yesterday and he's like, oh, hey, I saw you working with so-and-so. I need some help with what I'm doing. And I think like being willing to listen to that. And so, looking at these channels as things that you test, and then you go, well, is this getting is this value prop resonating in the right channel? Because there's different ways, there's different ways to kind of present that to an audience as well. And they're in different modes. So whether you're on like Twitter, you just like drive by traffic and just clicking aimlessly and killing time, or Facebook where you're in like more of a social mode, and LinkedIn where Jake's filling up your inbox with connection requests. Like it just depends on where you're at.
Yeah, and I think the other kind of point of that is just that this is like iterative along the way, and like you just learn. And probably one of the best things is to talk to your customers. Like it's just like that like customer development interviews, like article that you sent over and stuff like that is all extremely relevant to this. And just like there's another thing from Jason Cohen that he's like things founders never say. And one of my favorite ones from that is like I spent too much time talking to customers in the early days. Like and like it's just so spot on though, because it's just like you don't always want to do it, but like right now I'm just like, okay, like I'm just gonna have a lot of calls with all these customers for email newsletters. I'm gonna be on the onboarding calls because like it's just talking through them until you
Mm.
start to see those like patterns of what people say over and over and over again. Like that we tried prospecting and I hate it and I don't want to do it. Like that messaging for a lead cookie,
Hmm.
and like oh, all of our work comes from referrals and word of mouth. Like all that messaging just comes from talking to customers, and like that's where like really good value propositions and like marketing copy comes from, is just having a lot of those conversations
Mm.
and then just noting and seeing the repeatable trends that happen across different people.
Hmm.
And that's like what makes for us like a strong like getting your value proposition in place, like better, and getting all that copy that surrounds it is just having those conversations.
Yeah, and this is the simplicity of it, but also the beauty of it. Like I've realized that for me to have like content that I can write about, all I need to do is look at a pattern that's popped up where I've had a couple coaching conversations during the week and I've heard the same thing more than two or three times.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this week, it's something really random, but it's like the difference between like artists and robots. So this like creative versus this like analytical side of people or teams. And I've seen it pop up maybe three times, and then that gives me something to write about and something to talk to. But it's not something where I'm like, okay, I have this like point of view and then I'm trying to bring people along to it. I'm actually listening to what they say and just feeding them back, respecting one of the challenges, other thing, and get in the way of their communication. So yeah, list like getting on those calls, but also like reading the transcripts of those calls is super useful because you can pull out snippets, like these little like gems, these little nuggets that people don't realize they say, but are absolute gold as far as it relates to value prop as well.
Yeah, and you could see this done really well on the podcast Royale. Like his headline there of like we make like podcasting like achievable or whatnot was just like, man, I don't know how many times like I've told people, yeah, my podcast is awesome. Like you should start a podcast. It's been huge for my business. And they're just like, it just seems like a lot of work. That's what they all say. And I'm just like, so like I saw his headline and he's like, man, he nailed it because that is what everyone's objection is,
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to be too much work for them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to like explain to them that it doesn't have to be, but like so like that was like again I think really like hitting the value prop like head on with that.
Yeah, and he's iterated. I know he's iterated on like landing pages and value prop like dozens and dozens of times, right? And still to this day, like when I was requesting, because I was trying to find the document and then I finally found it. But he's like, "Which version are you on?" And I was like, okay, okay. I like what you're doing there. I like what you're doing there."
Yeah, so that's like yeah, what he's done on that one is like a good solid example. Like I was looking at like this is solid copy, and like it takes time to get to that. And like I look at my like Content Allies website and I'm like, God, this is ugly and horrendous, and I'm not happy at all with it. Even though I just like wrote it on Monday, like rewrote it, but I'm just like I know this. I'm gonna have to rewrite this thing like 4 times before I get better because I just haven't talked to enough customers. Versus a lead cookie, I rewrote it probably like 4 times,
Hmm.
and then I'm at a spot where I'm like, all right, this is working, and like it hits with the market, and then you can kind of just like for like let it go for a bit. But like that's like it takes time and just iterations to get to that.
Yeah, the reason that I shared Adam's kind of breakdown was because when he sent it over to me, like I read it, and then my question was like, "How do I pay you?"
Yeah.
Right? Like that was the question because he'd answered all of these questions because I had like reservations, and I'm like, okay, like do these guys know what they're talking about? Do they have a good process? Like who else have they worked with? Those standard questions that you're trying to ask, and if you can package all of that up in a really clear format and jump ahead. And these are just questions that customers are going to ask. You accelerate your sales process because that's like a big ticket thing. I think he's like top tiers in the like couple of grand for a service, and you save you save a lot of back and forth on questions, or like unasked questions as well, by being super, super clear and articulate in like how you position what you do.
Yeah, and I think just getting to that point of just being able to write the web page copy, and like even just going after that again and again, like that is like, if you can get the full web page written, that is like I think the point where you've gotten it all fully articulated, because that's what it takes. And I'll drop this link in the chat on this, and I don't know if I'm gonna post it with it, but like this Copy Hackers article that I sent you whenever you were working on your site, like this is just like my Bible for every time I write a landing page. I just open this up, and like that article it's just like a framework to kind of put it in. But if you go through all those things, it forces you to think through, why someone should care, why it's safe for them to care, like what it is you actually do, like matching with the target audience at the top. So just getting that copy written again is core for it. So
yeah, I used that, and every time I took myself off the path of that, I was like pretending you were with me, and you're like, come on, stay, like focus on what's in front of you, like look at this article that I've sent you. So I did that. And then the other thing that I did when I was creating the content, or the breakdown for the course, is I also looked at a course that I knew how to was really performing like super well, but it was positioned in a way that wasn't like a typical kind of like, okay, we're gonna, here's like $50,000 of value, and we're only charging you $500 because that's not my shtick. My shtick is like, it's going to be hard work, and I'm not going to make you guarantees that you're going to like immediately make a bunch of money. But if you follow the process and the principles, then you're going to end up like way further down the path than you were before. And so I think the other thing is like looking at people, or looking at examples of things that are successful, and then taking the essence out of that and going, okay, what can I glean from that they've probably learned that will help me, better shape up my offer.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it.
All right. Anything else to add on value prop?
Nothing, just other. I think it's iterative, and you just do the best you can, and you keep changing it as you talk to more and more people. So I think that's the biggest thing, but just throw something out there and start. So
yeah, don't sit on it and, like hypothesize yourself to death, because, just asking people in the group or asking your friends is not going to get you the answers you want. And this is a contact sport, unfortunately. So I think, as all the group members will know, and all the future group members will know, like that friction that you create by getting this in front of people, like that's where you actually learn. So it hurts a little bit, and it sucks when you have to go back to the drawing board, but that's also part of the fun.
Yeah, that is something that I will say on that, like last piece there, is that whenever I come up with something and I'm like, I just immediately get it in front of people. Like I don't sit there and simmer for weeks. Like that email newsletter idea came up on Friday. On Monday, I was pitching it to people. By Tuesday, I had sold the first person. Like that's like the way to go about it. And any time that I've sat there and like let an idea simmer for a long period of time before putting it in someone is always like a crappy idea. Like if I don't have someone I can put it in front of quickly, like it's just not, I'm just simmering. Like it never works. So just get it in front of people quickly.
Well, that's definitely something that I've learned from you, because I absolutely fall in the habit of like, I'll have a good idea and then I'll just sit on it, and I won't even think about it. I'll just put it on the back burner, and then there'll be enough pain where I'm like, oh shit, I actually have to have a sales process now, or I actually have to have like a clear value prop, or I have to have some content or market myself. Like, so I appreciate that about you, man. Thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, we'll wrap it there. Thanks for joining, and thank you for volunteering your time.
No problem.
All right.